Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. The transfer window for the summer 2025 has now shut. Done. All done. And this is how it all ended up for Leeds United. I've not included the contract expiry of James DeBeo, as I do apologise, there's some weird sound coming from outside there. Sounds like a vehicle struggling to set off. Oh god. Sounds like it's going to blow up. Hope it gets away far enough from here anyway. Apologies for that. So James DeBeo's contract ran out, but he was never in the running. You know, he's still only 20-year-old. He'd be still young enough for under 21s if he was still at Leeds. And Charlie Crew, who's gone on loan again to Doncaster, again still young enough for the under 21s. So again, just not a player that's going to feature in the first team. But we'll give those honourable mentions as it is anyway. So I'm going to just go down the list of the ones who aren't at Leeds anymore. Joshua Gilavogi, he was only signed on a short-term contract that expired. He hasn't found a club as of yet. I hope he does. Seems a really good bloke and would provide massive experience for any club that's willing to give him maybe his last contract before he goes into something else, whether it be football related or non-football related. Junior Firpo, his contract ran out, and ultimately he joined Real Betis, which is a club that he's played for in the past, so it kind of makes sense. And ultimately, it doesn't affect Leeds in there's no issues. Everything was fine with that really. So that occurred. A more recent one is that Darko JB has joined Hull City on a permanent deal. Now there has been no fee mentioned. I'm going to assume it's been done on a free transfer because Hull City, as far as I'm aware, have some kind of transfer embargo, meaning that they can only get free transfers and loan deals. I believe JB only had like 1 year left on his contract, but at the 21-year-old, he's not going to get in the first team, so it's some more wages off the books, effectively. And a relatively straightforward deal. JB doesn't have to, or potentially doesn't have to move house or anything. It's within travelable distance, if that's a word, but you get the idea. Patrick Bamford, his contract was mutually terminated. Seemingly no one was able to come in and offer anything for him, probably due to high wage demands. He was on 70 grand a week back when we were last in the Premier League, and probably had his wages reduced down to about 40 in the Championship. And then going back up, it would have gone back up to around 65. Thereabouts. So realistically, it's a fair chunk of wage off the books, and it allows Patrick to join a club, whenever he's ready, really. Sam Greenwood, he has joined Polish club Pogoń for approximately £3 million. I don't think it's a bad deal for Leeds in a sense, really. He was on the verge of possibly leaving for a Championship club for about 1.5, due to a clause in the contract, but that clause had seemingly expired, and I don't think Sam had a massive amount of time left on his contract, maybe a year left. So to get some money for him now is a decent deal. Max Werber has joined Werder Bremen on loan. Again, just not. He's not going to be part of the plans for the first team, and so it makes sense. Matteo Joseph has gone on loan to Mallorca. That one's just a straight up loan. So I think with Werber, I think Werder Bremen have either an option or obligation to purchase him at the end of the season. But with Matteo Joseph, I believe that is a straight up loan. I think. I could be wrong on that one. But I think the club still sees potential in Joseph. They want him to get some first team experience. He is only about 21-year-old at the moment, so he's got time to develop and hopefully have a good season in La Liga. Joe Geller, he's gone on loan to Hull City. There might be some kind of agreement in there somewhere for him to join on some kind of permanent deal, but I think very much like Sam Greenwood, I think Gelhart's contract doesn't have very long to run now anyway. So he might be free to join Hull at the end of the season in the end anyway. Max Werber has been joined by Isaac Schmidt. He's also gone on loan to Werder Bremen. I think there could be a buying option in there somewhere. Either option or obligation, something along those lines. I don't think Isaac's going to get into the squad at any point in time now, certainly not as a fullback. I think he's good enough to be retrained in a different position. Because he's when he's on the ball, he's not a bad player. He just lacks positional sense for a fullback. But he looked good when he was on the ball going forward. So I think you could fashion maybe a right winger or even a 10 out of Isaac Schmidt. But we'll see what happens with Isaac as his loan goes on. And then finally, Largi Ramazani, which I believe is a loan to Valencia with no option or obligation to buy. That is a straight up loan. Again, I think the club still sees some potential in Ramazani. He's obviously got a lot of quality on the ball, but I think Farke reckons he doesn't track back enough. And so therefore, because being in the Premier League you need wingers who will attack but can also have the ability to track back and show some defensive quality as well, I believe that this is why Largi Ramazani has been allowed to go just on a straight up loan with no buying options or obligations involved. Ramazani is also going to be linking up with their former Leeds United coach Carlos Cobran as well. So that could be a good fit. Carlos seems to be making a good reputation for himself as a head coach or manager. So yeah, that might work out all right. We'll see what happens with that one. So ultimately, those are all the players that have left. There's one or two players who it's a little bit surprising that they haven't left yet, but I believe that there is still some time on the loan window, and so there may be one or two players who may also leave Leeds before all official windows shut. I think there's also like an extended window for like Saudi and Qatari and clubs, stuff like that as well. That their windows are a bit different. Also, a couple of Scandinavian windows are different as well. But again, it's like, those particular leagues are not amazing, are they? The Saudi and Qatari leagues have obviously got a lot of money available, but I don't know. We'll see. So a couple of players who, are still at Leeds, but probably should be getting loan moves. The obvious one is Ilamelier, because he ain't going to get ahead of Perry, and seemingly Carl Darlow is ahead of him. And then you've got Alex Cairns to negotiate as well. So ultimately, I'm very surprised that nothing's been put in place for Ilimelia, even on a loan deal. Really surprised at that. There's a decent goalkeeper there, and with him not being in the plans for Leeds United for this season, I'm really surprised. I thought the club would have done more to help Ilan find somewhere else, which I think is a little bit lacklustre on the club. I think they've done the dirty on Ilimelia a little bit there, because Ilan ain't even making the bench. So that says a lot, really. The club was not successful in signing a right winger, central attacking midfielder or striker on deadline day. So that means that Joel Pirro has stayed, because there was talk of Pirro leaving if we got another striker in. On the face value of it all, I mean, we are now literally relying on Calvert-Lewin, Mecha and Pirro to get the goals. The club does still lack a little bit of creativity going forward, albeit hopefully someone like Okafor can maybe do the business when he gets to full fitness. We'll have to find out. We'll have to just wait and see. And again, if we had brought another midfielder in, there was talk of maybe Gruev going, and that was until Ampadu and Tanaka got themselves injured. So, in terms of what you see on the screen now, folks, is where the club is at as far as, ins and outs are concerned. I've gone through the incomings a couple of times now, but I'll just quickly go through them again. Noah Okafor bought for approximately £19 million, there or thereabouts. His fee was estimated in euros, and so I've kind of tried to work out as close to what it might be. Kind of difficult to tell. He got signed from AC Milan. We bought Anton Stack for about 17 million from Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. AC Milan, obviously Serie A. Jacobiol, one of the early signings that we made, got him for approximately £16 million from Serie A club Udinese. Lucas Perry bought for around £15 million from Olympique Lyonnais, if you want their full name, or just Lyon for short, in the French Ligue 1 or League 1. Sean Longstaff bought for about £12 million from Newcastle United, Premier League obviously. With that one, there are possible add-ons that would take it up to around 15 million, I think, if memory serves me right, but the initial fee is 12. Gabriel Gudmundsson signed for about £11 million, possibly slightly less, maybe 10.5, I've rounded up to 11, because why not. And he was bought from Lille in the French Ligue 1. James Justin bought from Leicester City, Championship as they are now, for about £8 million. With I believe the additionals would take it up to around 10 million. The add-ons, that kind of thing. Sebastian Bornau bought for just over 5 million, if I remember right, from Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin, contract had expired, but we've snapped him up on a free from Everton, Premier League obviously. And Lucas Mecha, also similar situation to Calvert-Lewin, and again, like Bornau, snapped up from Wolfsburg. So, as you can see, it's ironically it's ended up being there or thereabouts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it's roughly 10 in and 10 out. When in the scheme of things, there or thereabouts. I've got mixed feelings on it. I honestly think that the window started quite well, and we got a whole bunch of early signings in, but they were all the early ones were all of your defensive reinforcements, bar one or two. As far as the new signings are concerned, we haven't seen enough of Okafor yet. Stat, for the most part, looks good. Biol, we haven't seen enough of him yet. Perry, certain aspects of his game look very good, still needs to improve his kicking. But certainly his shot stopping and his claiming of crosses and corners and things, they look good. Sean Longstaff got his first start got his first Premier League start against his old club Newcastle, and I don't know whether maybe he just wanted to make a little point to his former employers or what, but he played very well against them. Now if he can produce those kind of performances week in, week out, then that then has to go down as a good signing. He's got, Wendy, what are you doing? You crazy kitty cat. So Longstaff, back to Premier League experience, so it makes a lot of sense, from that regard. Now on to probably my favourite signing of the bunch so far, Gabriel Gudmundsson, signed at left back. I think this is a really good signing, and I think I think that this signing will go a little bit under the radar, certainly for people outside of Leeds United. I think that the fans already can see that we've got a very capable replacement for Junior Firpo at left back here. Very, very good performances against Everton and Newcastle from Gudmundsson, and for the price, I don't think we've gone wrong here. I really don't. I'm going to sit my neck out and say he's the best signing we've got. When you take into account value, consistency in his performances. He was one of several players that came unstuck against Arsenal, because everyone came unstuck against Arsenal in that match. So that don't bother me. It's about how he performs against teams that are going to be closer to Leeds' level this season. And for me, he's been really, really very good, very, very good. And I just have to hope that the injury that he picked up in the last match is not a serious one. We need him. We absolutely need him. Good signing. Good signing. James Justin came on as a substitute against Newcastle. We haven't seen enough of him yet to be able to judge him yet. Sebastian Bornau's only played in the cup so far and didn't look great, but again he's I think he came back from a bit of an injury that he picked up in pre-season anyway, and he's not really featured too much yet. So again, a little bit unfair to fully judge Bornau at this stage. Calvert-Lewin, tricky one. DCL seems to be getting himself into good positions, and you can tell there's a genuine striker's instinct there. It's just a concern that he's not got rid of the rust and dust yet. If he can get fully fit and get his shooting boots on, it'll be interesting then to see what he can do. But in terms of his positional sense and being in the right area at the right kind of time, he's shown us a little bit of that so far. And I think for Dominic's point of view, it's just a case of fitness and consistency. And if he can get that, then on a free transfer could be a steal. But I ain't holding out for it in terms of just simply goals scored, because he's about a 1 in 5, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, which, you know, for a primary number 9 striker is not great. And then finally, Lucas Mecha. You know what? I think for a free, and again, a bit like Calvert-Lewin, he's not known for being a prolific goal scorer despite being a striker. But I've quite liked what Mecha's brought to the table so far. He's got quite a bit of running power in him. He's quite strong, can hold up the ball. He's can take a good penalty. I'll give him that. So yeah, not bad really. You know, for you get, there is a phrase that says you get what you pay for. I don't know whether that can always be put in place for footballers, because you've got things as little as zero going up to millions and millions of pounds. So you know, it's not like when you go to, you know, like an electronics store to buy a TV. You know what I mean? It's you're talking a serious business here in terms of, you know, the money involved, and let's face it, a free transfer is not really a free transfer as such. There's going to be lots of money in there somewhere. There could be signing on fees for the players that join. The players that join are going to be on thousands and thousands of pounds per week. So it's not free in this sense. It just means that we haven't given money to Everton or Wolfsburg for the two of them. That's all that means, really. So, with this in mind, then, how do I rate the transfer window for Leeds United? In terms of the players that have gone, I don't think we've lost anyone that would have really, you know, boosted what we currently have. Ramazani a squeeze. But again, if Ramazani goes on an attack that looks really promising and then he gets a shot away and it's held by the goalkeeper, if that goalkeeper has got a very quick distribution, we're in trouble. And I mean, I'm only going off what seems to have come out of the club themselves, or certainly Farke, in terms of, or you know, what has seemingly come across, that the main reason that we've allowed Ramazani to go out on loan is because he doesn't track back either at all, or as much, or as successfully as the other wingers at the club. I mentioned, you know, a couple of players that you know weren't involved in exiting the club earlier. You've got the likes of Harrison and Aronson as well. Both of those have stayed. That's just come to mind now. So, in terms of the Leeds squad going forward, we have to assume something is going to be put in place for Illan Meslier. He can't just kind of sit around doing nothing. You know, look at what Bamford did. You know, like Bamford was told long ago that he wasn't going to be in the plans for this new season, and you know, everyone at the club has come to an agreement that allows Patrick Bamford to move on. Surely they've got to have something in place for Meslier. Whether they do the same with his contract or that they allow, you know, some kind of loan to happen. But they can't just let him sit there. You know what I mean? That ain't fair on Meslier, and it's not fair on the club. Something's got to be put in place there. Has to be. And at his age as well, he's about 25-year-old. He needs to be playing games. So yeah, something seems a bit off with the Meslier situation to me, and I'm not keen on it. Something doesn't sit right with me with that. It's clear that Meslier is not in the plans at Leeds United. So why has something not happened already? I think the club needs to come out with some kind of statement regarding the future of Illan Meslier. What are they going to do now to help him find somewhere that he can go and play some games? Because right now, Meslier is still a Leeds United player, but he ain't going to get anywhere near that first team. Not with the goalkeeping department that we've got now. At best, he might be allowed to train, but even Bamford didn't seem to be training with first team in the end, towards the point of his contract running out. Being mutually terminated. So I really don't know. But I do feel a bit sorry for Illan Meslier, in the sense that something has not been put in place for him. I think feels a bit wrong. Feels a bit wrong to me. Someone within the club must have been responsible for sorting that. And for whatever reason it hadn't happened. As far as Jack Harrison's concerned, the club or Daniel Farke obviously sees a more all-round game in Jack Harrison to suit Farke's style than what is seen in Ramazani. Certainly as far as Premier League is concerned. And I think with Aronson, he's probably been kept on for his work rate and the effort that he does put in when he gets on the pitch. But on the basis that we haven't brought in an additional right winger, you've got to assume that there could still be space for Aronson, somewhere along the lines. So ultimately, the squad as it looks now, and I haven't typed this up, I'm just going to try and read it out. Goalkeepers for the season are going to be Lucas Perry, Carl Darlow and Alex Cairns. I genuinely don't see Meslier coming back in, unless something changes, but I don't see it happening. Right back, we've got James Justin and Jayden Bogle. God, mind block, terrible. Left back, we've got Gabriel Gudmundsson and Sam Byram. And again, Byram and Justin, both of those can do both sides, so that kind of helps. That covers both sides in equal measure. So we're not too bad at fullback, generally speaking. Centre backs, Strout, Rodon, Bornau and Biol. I think we're pretty well covered. In all areas there, it's pretty decent, I think, overall. Midfielders, Ampadu, Tanaka, Gruev, Longstaff and Stack. I just feel it lacks a more creative, attack-minded central midfielder. I don't think you get that with any of those five. The closest possibly would be Tanaka, but he's injured. Stack can, play, pretty much anywhere in the midfield, but he's not, none of these have got that flair. That little bit of magic that the likes of Rafinha and Pablo Hernandez have had. When they were playing for Leeds. We haven't signed a creative, flary midfielder. The nearest to that probably would have been Ramazani. I mean, now, with who we've got in the squad, the nearest to it is probably Harrison. His ball control's very good. if you watch him on the ball, he is very, very good. In that department. The big difference is that Jack Harrison really needs to work hard on the accuracy of his crossing and his set pieces. But when he's on the ball, he's when he's in possession of the ball, he is good. So yeah, we're definitely lacking there. So something needed to happen there, and for whatever reason, we've just not been able to target the right kind of player in the eyes of Daniel Farke. Or Adam Underwood, or whoever's been in charge of dealing with it all. So those are your midfielders. Wingers, Brendan Aronson's seen as a winger this season. He's not played centrally, really. And also on the right hand side, then you've got Dan James, and then left side you've got Will Nonto and Jack Harrison. So numbers wise, there's enough. We've got it, and Okafor as well. So we've technically we've got 5 wingers, 4 natural ones, and then Aronson, who's, I don't know what position you'd say for Aronson. Like, is he a 10? Is he a winger? I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know. It makes my head hurt when trying to figure Brendan Aronson out. And I don't mean that in an offensive manner whatsoever. I just genuinely don't know. So yeah, numerically we've got enough midfielders, we've got enough wingers, and then up front we've got Joel Pirou, Lucas Mecha, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So we've got 3 strikers, and if you're going to squeeze out an extra one just for shits and giggles, you can put Harry Gray in there. But to me, Harry Gray is an under-21 striker right now. That's his level. That's where he's learning. He's having a very good start to the season. But, like Farke says, we need to curb the enthusiasm a little bit and just enjoy, watching his development. And, maybe next season. Maybe next season could be the season for Harry Gray, as far as the first team squad is concerned, at least. But this season, he's, and he's still a kid. People need to remember that he's still a kid. He's good, but he's a kid. And we're in the Premier League. It's a man's league. It's not a kid's league. So, numerically, we've got enough players. Have we got enough quality? This is the question. Out of those new players, so far, it's only a very small sample size, there's only been Stack, Perry, and Gudmundsson that have seemingly played the most, and then also Longstaff, Mecha, and Calvert-Lewin have had a little bit of game time as well, and then James Justin for about 10 minutes. No, to be fair, I think Okafor's had a sub-appearance as well or something, if I remember right. But ultimately, there's not enough of a sample size for any of the new players just yet. It's very, very, very early days. A fair chunk of that list did play in the cup match against Sheffield Wednesday. That was just bizarre. I'm pushing that to the side. I'm not going to judge these players on what was a very unusual circumstance in that cup match. I'm just going to focus on Premier League performances. So there's a bit of time yet before we really find out what these 10 new players can do. But I am, as I said before, I am impressed with Gudmundsson. and I think that, you know, Stack and Longstaff and Metcher have kind of shown, you know, and Perry actually have shown a little bit of what they can do. But there's a long way to go. I would rather judge these players maybe on the approach to the January transfer window or even the end of the season. You know, that would be a fairer way to assess if these 10 players have actually improved the squad. I hope they do. I hope they do improve the squad. I really do. But when you look at the lineups for the matches, forget the Arsenal one because that was a walloping. But if you look at the 2 home games against Everton and Newcastle, there was a lot of players that featured in the Championship for Leeds United. And they, you know, for the most part in those 2 games, they don't look out of place. So it's actually going to be kind of hard for these new lads to show how much they do improve the squad. You know, when you look at the signings that Sunderland and Burnley have made, could possibly be argued that the 2 of them have had better transfer windows than Leeds. But in terms of their squads overall, are they any better than Leeds' squad overall? I wouldn't have said so. I don't think. You know, when you look at the teams that we've bought these players from, most of these teams are not, you know, they're not scrattling around in 3rd division of European football. You know, you've got Italian giant AC Milan, you've got Hoffenheim who have been in the Bundesliga, you know, quite a bit in recent years. You've got Udinese who have been a mid-table Serie A team for God knows how long now. You've got Lyon who not that long ago were one of the best teams in France. You've got Newcastle who in more recent times have been, you know, competing in Champions League and Europa League. You got Lille, who again, not that long ago, were doing really well in the French league. Leicester, all right. Leicester's possibly a bit of an exception to the general rule here. But you know, if you go back far enough, they have won the Premier League. You know, that is a long time ago now, though. It's weird how long ago that is. You know, Wolfsburg, again, for the most part, a very solid Bundesliga team. And then Everton, you know, since the Premier League was formed, they've been an ever-present. They're one of not many teams who have ever been relegated from the Premier League. So the teams that we've bought these players from are from, you know, fairly decent teams. So it's not like we've been buying players from unknown teams or anything like that. And there's you've got a bit of a mix in terms of, you know, you've got some European flair in there, and then you've got some players that are experienced of the English game. You know, the likes of Longstaff and Justin and Calvert-Lewin and even Metcher to a lesser extent. You know, they're all familiar with the English game. So I think there's a decent mix there. And I think for the most part, certainly in terms of quantity, we're fairly well covered in most positions. I just worry about the lack of goals. You know, we've battled really hard against Everton and Newcastle to grind out those clean sheets, but we showed very little going forward. And this, to be fair to Farke, right? Farke said he needed attacking reinforcements, and aside from Metcher and Calvert-Lewin and maybe Okafor, we haven't signed anyone. We haven't bought anyone. We haven't even loaned anyone. It was crying out for a prolific goal-scoring striker. It was crying out for a creative midfielder. It was crying out for a right winger. And we didn't get any of those. aside from a pair of free transfers with Calvert-Lewin and Metcher. So, in that regard, it's disappointing. From an overall rating of the transfer window, I'd have to say it's a 5 out of 10 because it seems half done, doesn't it? It kind of feels unfinished. Now, I'm not saying that Leeds haven't tried to get their business done, but what we've got to remember also is that as much as Leeds might have tried to get certain players, you're negotiating with another club. So it might be partially on the side of the other club that something's gone a bit wrong. But ultimately, and this is where Leeds need to take the hit, is that they've had enough time. They've had enough time to get the reinforcements in. They've had the exact same amount of time as every other club. Certainly every other club in the Premier League, they've had the exact same amount of time. So, what are the excuses? What are the reasons? I don't know. I really, really don't know. So now we just have to hope that we don't get any more injuries. It's bad enough having Ampadu and Tanaka unavailable. But we've got to find a way. Now, as I say, if there is a loan option available to get a striker in, if it's a striker that's going to score more goals than either Calvert-Lewin, Metcher or Pirro, then for God's sake, get him in. Something has to be done in that regard because I think at this particular juncture, I think Daniel Farke is shitting himself. I really do. He won't show it. He won't show it in interviews, or he won't show it on the touchline or anything like that, right? But right now, he's going to be thinking to himself, right, this is what I've got. Now it's down to me to try and coach these boys and show them how to score goals. But that's going to be difficult for Farke now. He hasn't brought in, or the club hasn't brought in, a prolific striker or a creative midfielder that can bag the assists. Or a right winger that can maybe get a little bit of both. So it's disappointing. If we'd have filled those vacancies as they are, then I think the transfer window would have gone from a 5 to an 8. But I think with those missing components, we are relying on a pair of free transfers. I wouldn't say like an expensive left winger, but certainly a left winger that's cost us more than any other player. And a pair, just a pair of free transfer strikers, and then everyone else are players that we've already had. To me, this transfer window just seems unfinished, incomplete, and so from a fan point of view, the only thing that we can do as fans now is just to get behind the lads that play. We've got to, it's not easy to forget. We've just got to forget now that there was ever a transfer window. The squad as it is now is what we've got, and this is what we've got to rely on. So it's down to these boys now to stay fit, get sharp, find their goal-scoring boots from somewhere, and just see how we do. But it don't look good, does it? It feels unfinished. But there we go, folks. 3/4 of an hour. Jesus Christ! I don't know how to do a short stream, do I, or a short video? It's crazy. Well, big thank you for watching. This has been my summary of Leeds United's summer transfer window and where the squad is at now, and well, you know, what I feel about the quality of the squad. And, you know, we've got some good players. Like, it's not like the squad's got bad players. It was just there's other squads in the Premier League that, certainly on paper, and I know football's played on grass and not played on paper, but ultimately there's other squads that on paper look far stronger than our own. So now we've just got to hope that the players we've got are going to be good enough. And only time will tell with that. Let's see how we get on in the next 3 games. I think the next 3 games we can stay unbeaten. You know, so as a minimum it has to be 3 draws. But if we can bag 1 or 2 wins out of that, so whether it be 1 win and 2 draws or two wins and 1 draw, you know, that I think that'd be really good. But we'll see what happens. But big thank you for watching. Do please give the video a like, and do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.